Welcome to the Love Mondays podcast. My goal is to bring inspiring and authentic guests on the show who can help everyone love their Mondays and every other day of the week. My guest today is Dr. Lycka. He is acknowledged as one of the leading cosmetic dermatologists in the world, a pioneer in the field. He developed several new technologies and has spoken at podiums worldwide. In 2003, his life changed when he was misdiagnosed and given 6 months to live. More to come on that. After fighting the diagnosis, he is here today as a result of his courage and determination. Having been given a golden ticket, Dr. Lycka used this experience to co-author a book, The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life, with an introduction by Jack Canfield, one of my favorite authors. He is now an expert at living a fantastic life and shares his journey with others. A keynote speaker, a mentor, a trainer, he is also a life coach for individuals looking to overcome adversity and live their best life. He has been married to Dr. Lucy Bernier Lycka for 42 years. Congratulations. Together, they have 4 daughters and 8 grandchildren, and he considers that his greatest achievement. Dr. Lycka, that was quite a mouthful. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Ron, it is my pleasure to be here. And as you've said, it's my pleasure to be anywhere these days.
Fantastic. I love it. Okay, my first question is always, how do people start loving their Mondays even more? If they're not quite loving it, they're not quite liking it, what's some crisp advice you can give them to get started?
Well, let me tell them is this. Suppose you were told you would have no more Mondays. Suppose you went to your doctor and he told you in 6 months there are no more Mondays. Wouldn't you start loving Mondays? Wouldn't you start saying, I have to live every Monday to the best I can? That every Monday is a God's gift and I have to live it to the fullest? Look, every day we're given, Ron, is something that we're not guaranteed. You know that. So we have to take advantage of every opportunity we have. So when I wake up on Monday and I look at my schedule and say, oh my goodness, look at all this beautiful stuff I have. Look, I'm talking to Ron Montiero this week. I'm going to be able to influence people through his show. What a beautiful day it is.
Fantastic. I absolutely love it. And we'll get to what you call the pearls of wisdom that connect to that a little bit later. But give my listeners 2 to 3 things you do every single day to love your day.
Well, first of all, I wake up, put my feet on the floor, get ready for the day. And, I spend 5 minutes in silence, just getting grounded with the day. And then I look at my schedule and say, wow, this is what's going to happen in this day. These are a couple of things that are going to happen. Then I say, well, how can I make them even better? How can I plus them? How can I make them to the best that I possibly can? And my whole idea is to make every show I'm on, every show I produce, is to make it better than the previous show. And that's how you make it marvelous and wonderful. Then every evening, I shut everything off at about 7 or 8 o'clock and don't do any more with the internet, don't do any more online, and maybe read a bit, watch some TV, spend some time with my wife, and say, that was another beautiful day. And then I spend the day, a couple of minutes, listing in gratitude for all the things that have happened. And at the beginning of the day, I also put in gratitude for all the things that are going to happen.
Fantastic. I love how you bookend the day with gratitude. And that period of silence, I do a 10-minute meditation every day. It's so important to just ground yourselves. Whereas many of us, and I used to do it, the first thing you do is you look at your phone and you're almost kind of following somebody else's schedule or being impacted by negative news or things like that. So I think that's really, really powerful. Okay, we'll come back to what you call attitude and gratitude. I love it. But I want to just start with your story. Tell us the story of when you were faced with a life-threatening illness.
In 2003, I was walking in Disney World, which is supposedly the happiest place in the earth, and my wife turned to me and said, "What's wrong with you, hon?" I didn't know anything was wrong with me. But like many wives, they're more perceptive about you than you are. And she said, you have a dropped right foot. And I had suddenly and mysteriously developed a dropped right foot. And after a gazillion dollars of investigations and seeing thousands of specialists, they shook their head and said, I don't know what's wrong. So they sent me to a neurologist. A neurologist is the brain guy that's supposed to have all the answers. And I walked in and I said, hi. And he said, hi back. But you better be sitting down when I tell you this. I said, why? I have a dropped right foot. He said, no, you don't. You have ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Get your affairs in order. In 6 months, you're going to be dead. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I said, is there a way to prove this diagnosis? He said, of course. On autopsy. He had the bedside manner of Dr. House on the old TV show. So I slammed the door, I walked out, and I said, I'm not going to die to prove you wrong. But you know, when this happens, you go through anger, you go through denial, you go through bargaining, you go through depression. And I wasn't going to accept this diagnosis. So I went and looked around the internet. It was invented in about 2003. And I found a doctor in Colorado Springs that had symptoms very similar to I have. And he was told that he had chronic Lyme's disease, and he was treated for that. And like Lazarus, he arose from the dead. So I got in touch with that doctor, went down to Colorado Springs, and he started me on treatment. And that's why I'm here today.
Wow.
I turned my tears into triumph, my adversity into advantage, and I'm not looking back. And I share that story with everybody, not for me, but for them, so that they can turn their tears to triumph, their adversity to advantage, so that they can rise above it. And inside of every cloud, there's a silver lining. You have to just find it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story of how you didn't settle for that really tough diagnosis. It must have been heartbreaking. I know I listened to another podcast you did where it took a while for you to come to terms with it, but then you said, okay, what can I do about it? How can I find another solution? And that's so important to say, when faced with these big life moments, it's hard. Like, how do you even think to ask for a second opinion when you're faced with something like that?
You know, it's hard. You know, I'm a doctor, and I'll tell you, it's hard as a doctor to admit you're wrong. It's very hard for a doctor even to think outside the box. But I've learned that you have to think outside the box in order to help your patients. So I put myself into that other space and said, if this wasn't ALS, what would it be? And how could I find the diagnosis? Well, two answers in this day and age. One is AI. Put down in AI, what are other things that look like ALS? And it'll give you a list looking on all the world's literature. And then the other place is Dr. Google. That also gives you the answer. But you know, back in 2003, there was none of that. You only could get on the internet by dial-on connections. And you had to put a phone on a cradle and it would go ria, ria, ria for 15 minutes. And if you got to the other side, you were lucky enough to get and find things out. Fortunately, I had friends that were nerds that could help me out. And so I was able to find things out that I couldn't otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to go for that second, third, fourth, opinion with different people with different philosophies who have a little bit more of a holistic approach. Amazing. So now you've got what you called your golden ticket, right? You've got a second lease at life. What are you doing with this second lease? Like, tell me what you're doing these days.
Well, you know, the thing is, I am using my life to my advantage. And a fortunate thing happened in 2019 called the pandemic. because I was going to go around the world speaking. And what happened in 2019 is all the stages around the world went away. They stopped. There was no travel. So I used to do a podcast back in the early 2000s. I was one of the few doctors that was using that media. So I said, well, I did it then. Why don't I use it now? And so I started doing a podcast, and it was picked up by my friend on Brushwood Media, and then it was picked up by Apple. So as you know, I'm shared by over 7 million listeners a month. And so I have a listenership that is huge, and my message gets out to everybody. And I'm using that as a platform to get my message on positivity out to the world. And as you know, Ron, this world needs positivity right now. It's Absolutely. A sad state right now. So I love to share it.
Fantastic. And as I was getting to know you, your book, this book here, which you co-authored, The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life. And I really enjoyed it. I was reading it last week. I was on a plane back from Vancouver, and I love the stories in it. So every chapter has a story. Every pearl has a story, and they're different stories, very engaging, that tell the moral of it and explain why each of these pearls are important.
Each one of these pearls really is a cornerstone for each listener to explore their life. So I really expect people to take it, listen to it, read it, implement it, and go on to the next pearl. This book is like peeling the layers of an onion. There's so much depth in it. It's crazy.
Yeah, no. So what I love saying is there's 13 pearls in there, and some of us may be good at 8. Maybe we're not as we don't implement 5 of them. For me, it's about saying, what is one thing each of your readers, each of your listeners can do and slowly progress, right? And so what I'd love is if you think about I don't know if you do have 3 favorites out of the pearls, but I'd love you to share 3 of them and maybe share why it's important and maybe a short story for each one of them.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to pick it's like asking who your favorite child is. You know, you can't do that. But my first chapter is the one that I worked on the most, and it's on love. And I think the story from that is really important. And it's called The Shoebox. There once was a little 3-year-old girl who was extremely happy. She was angelic and had red curly hair. She was always singing and playing. She never walked. She skipped everywhere she went. The world was her oyster. From sunup to sundown, everyone who saw her had a smile on their face. One day her father punished her daughter for wasting a roll of gold wrapping paper. You see, money was tight, and he became infuriated when the child tried to decorate a shoebox to put under the tree. Undeterred, she did it anyhow. He opened the box and found nothing in it. He was infuriated and punished her. She said, "Dad, you're so silly. I blew kisses into that box. They're all for you." A short time later, the girl died in a tragic car accident. Her father was beside himself. He was mortified. He didn't know what to do, but he kept the shoebox under his bed. And occasionally he'd feel her presence. He'd feel her on her lap. He'd feel her kisses. But he died a short time later. He went up to heaven, and there was St. Peter at the pearly gates. And St. Peter said, "You can't come and just in here. You have to give me something very valuable." And he did. He gave St. Peter the shoebox. And St. Peter said, "Come in, my friend. You've given me the gift of pure love." Peter then said, this is the most amazing thing. I can see my daughter again. And he saw her and he said, I missed you. And she said, why? I never left you. God turned me into an angel. And every time you were sad, I sat on your lap. I kissed you and whispered in your ear. And that is what love is about. It really is about something that is given. It is done it without respect to yourself, and you keep on giving it. And I challenge your listeners to give the gift of love to somebody today. If you're in line to buy something in coffee at a Tim Hortons, buy coffee for the person next in line. Do it. You will see how the world is a better place. And you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you.
Yeah, and you're probably doing it for both sides. I mean, a kind word, buying a coffee, smiling at somebody, letting somebody in front of you in line if they've got one item. I think it's the little actions that, as you said, can have a ripple effect across the world. Absolutely love it. Okay, so that's 1 out of the 3. Give me 2 more.
Okay, enthusiasm.
Okay, amazing. And we don't need to go through the story, but I'd love you to tell me what's enthusiasm for you. Why is it important
you
to
see
be
that when I come on a show like this, I'm enthusiastic. I make sure everybody knows my enthusiasm because people will forget everything about you. They'll forget your stories. They'll forget everything. But if you approach it with enthusiasm, you are going to make a difference in their life. And they're going to remember you and remember what you said.
Amazing. And so let's say you wake up, not you, but let's say somebody wakes up and it's a tough day and maybe it's a Monday, they don't love what they're doing. Where do you start? Like, is it a practice, like going to the gym, you get better and better at it? Like how can people start?
It's a muscle that people build, Ron. It's a muscle they start. It starts with thankfulness. It starts with gratitude. It starts with saying thank you for 3 little things that are going to happen today. It starts with that little gift of gratitude, which is another golden pearl in my set. And that is how you really galvanize and crystallize this. This is how you make it happen and bring it home every day.
I love it. I love it. And interestingly enough, in the book, I was reading the chapter on gratitude, and your co-author, Harriet Tinka, she was talking about, she has noticed when she has that practice, the gratitude practice, the day seems to flow by, things go in her favor. And when she skipped it, more hurdles emerged. It was really interesting for me. And I think I feel the same thing. Can you explain that? Like, what's the science behind that?
Well, let me give you a story that Harriet loves to share. Harriet's a long distance runner. She's one of those people that runs ultra marathons, like 5 days without sleep. Well, she was running one and she ran in the wrong direction. She tumbled down a hill, and there was a person running in the race that was coming up that was going to quit. She couldn't make it. She had a disabled right leg. And Harriet said, to hell with this race. I'm going to help you along. And she got the girl to lean on her. They ran the race together, and they finished like 86th, which is bad for her. But she said, boy, that was the best race I'd ever run.
Amazing. Amazing. So doing a kind gesture like that, I mean, that's absolutely massive. So as we think about gratitude, like how does that connect to the gratitude piece?
Gratitude is something that's a fundamental thing in everybody's life, or at least it should be. You have to have gratitude for everything. You have to bring that home in everything you do. A life of gratitude has been shown to increase your success, increase your brain waves, increase everything that goes on. And as we talked before the show, there's something called synchronicity. Synchronicity in the universe loves gratitude. If you live a life of gratitude, the universe is in your favor.
Yeah, I love it. They say, when you put something out in the universe, that's what comes back to you. So gratitude, whatever it is, I absolutely love that. Okay, so let's move from gratitude to attitude. And I'm a big believer, even, when people used to tell me, hey, what do you look for when you hire people? I would honestly take a great attitude over a great resume any day of the week. So tell me more about attitude.
Well, I think a great thinker, Zig Ziglar, said, attitude is more important than altitude any day. What did he mean by that? He meant that attitude carries the day. That attitude is the most important thing. If you want to shape your day, have a positive mindset. Have a positive winning mindset where you know you're going to win regardless. I'm a big hockey fan, and last night the Oilers did their usual thing and got behind 2 goals. Well, they ended up winning the game 5-3. How did they do that? They knew that they're going to win regardless. They knew that no matter what, they had the players, the people that would pull it off. So that's how you win. You win because you know things are going to happen. And I've always said, you're always going to win in the end. And if you don't win, it's not the end yet.
I love it. I love it. That's a beautiful thing. And, as you were talking, it reminded me of the quote, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond to it. Right. And, I've talked before about that. How important is it to have an attitude where you can still choose a response in adversity?
I've just become a Canfield certified coach, and Jack teaches us a very important principle, and that's to take 100% responsibility for everything in your life. 100%. You can't blame it on your childhood. You can't blame it on anything else. You can't blame it on the weather. You can't, but take 100% responsibility. That's the number one principle in his success principles. And if you do, the world becomes something totally different.
Yeah, I know that was one of the game-changing books for me. And I remember that chapter, and I remember being a little skeptical. Hey, what if somebody got into a car accident? What something terrible happened to them? And what was great about that book is it talked about that. It said, yes, we all have challenges in life, but our choice becomes how we respond. And again, that ability to choose and say, here's what I can do, even in a tough situation, is really powerful. And, I remember when we were talking, you mentioned Viktor Frankl's book. Anything you want to add about that?
Viktor Frankl's book, The Ascent of Mankind, is a book everybody should read. Why? Viktor Frankl was a prisoner of war in the Second World War, and he found that people that gave up were the ones that would die. But people that had some meaning, some reason to live, ended up living. Now, Viktor Frankl's meaning to live was his wife. He knew after the war they'd get together again, and he knew that this would not be the situation. And how did he get through every day in a horrendous prison camp? Well, he'd make little jokes. He said, I knew this guard when he was my bank manager. He would do things like that. He'd make an intolerable situation into a situation where he'd laugh and make it a better situation. And that's how he really made it a day that would make a difference. If people haven't read that book, make sure you do. I fought it for a long time saying, why the heck would I want to get depressed by reading a book like that? Well, you don't get depressed. You learn that there's a deeper meaning to everything.
Yeah, I loved it. Like, so Man's Search for Meaning was the book that I read from him.
Yeah, and he wrote a couple. So I
yeah, so maybe
one.
I think they're both probably life-changing and inspiring. So inspiring in terms of we all have a choice no matter our circumstances. So absolutely love it. Okay, so we've talked about a few pearls, Dr. Lycka. As you think about the book, what have we not talked about that you think is absolutely game-changing for anyone?
I would say read the book. It's a simple read. You could read it in a couple of hours, but when you dive into it, you will find that there's a lot more there. Find the principle of love, act the principle of love, and make it happen. Find the principle of enthusiasm, act the principle of enthusiasm, make it happen. Find the principle of forgiveness, act the principle of forgiveness, make it happen. That is how you change the world around you and make the world a better place.
Absolutely. I love it. And it's about one step at a time, one action at a time. And, even forgiveness, which you just talked about, I used to think forgiving is for the other person, similar to what we talked about. It's actually for yourself just as much. It's about just removing that from your system, allowing yourself to be enthusiastic, present a great attitude. And again, it's always about one increment changes.
Yeah. And if you think that forgiveness is about something else, it's really not. It's about the following. If you think you can't forgive, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You have to get rid of that 50-pound weight off your back and make it happen so that you can survive and do better.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I've done a lot of reading over the last little while. One of the books I've read is called Ikigai, the Japanese concept, right? Which it's folks in Okinawa, Japan, or who find their purpose. Retirement is not even a consideration. And honestly, for you on your second career, I just congratulate you for your tremendous enthusiasm and how you want to change the world. You got 7 million people listening, and that can have a positive or a negative ripple effect.
Well, something just happened, Ron, and that's we now are being covered by a lot more different stations. Roku, Apple TV, several others. So that 7 million is likely going to go up to at least 100 million people.
Oh, wow. Changing the world as we speak.
Well, and my life purpose is to inspire and empower people to live their best life with passion, mindset, and tenacity.
Fantastic.
I do this through speaking, writing, and mentoring. So that is what I've decided my purpose is. Now, if people can't boil it down to something like that, do a part-time Ikigai. Try it on for size, and then you'll be able to find your full-time Ikigai. I find that people can try something on before you live with it and wear it forever. That wasn't my Ikigai to begin with. It developed over time. But once you develop your Ikigai, your passion, it fits. It in your soul of soul and your heart of heart.
Fantastic. And where can folks find you?
I'm available at Dr. Alan Lycka. That's Drallen, Lycka, LYCKA.com. Or if you want to see my speaker site, it's dralspeaks.com. Find me at both of those. I'm available. I'm more on LinkedIn than the other social media sites, but I'm on all of them. So you can reach me through all of them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your time and continue to inspire the world. I absolutely love it.
Ron, thank you for having me today. Today I'm going to be starting a new feature, a new 5-minute podcast called Thankful Thursdays. And so I'm going to put that at the top of my list.
I love it. I know Thirsty Thursdays, but now I know Thankful Thursdays.
Yeah, even another more reason to be thirsty.
Amazing. All right. Have a fantastic day. Thank you so much, Dr. Lycka.
Thank you, Ron, for having me.